Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Across the Pond with me, Andy and Stein. This evening we have a very special guest, and I'm pleased to announce that we've got Vinnie Adams on from the Disclosure team, or the Real Disclosure team. How are you, Vinnie?
I'm good, thank you, Lee. Glad to be here
Thank
with you,
you.
Andy. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I was just going to say thanks a lot for coming on. I know you're a busy man. You're recording a show straight after this, I believe. Is that right?
I am, yes.
Lovely. For those of you that don't know, Vinnie is in the tens of thousands of followers now with his Disclosure team on YouTube and various other platforms. And it's been a hell of a journey. I mean, that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Put some meat on the bones. Tell you who Vinnie Adams is, because you may have seen his videos out there talking UAPs, all things UAPs, with many different guests. But who is Vinnie and why should we listen to him? So we're going to get him on now and we're going to talk about it. So first things first, Vinnie, again, thank you for coming on. I know you're busy and we very much appreciate that. You may have heard, listeners, that his accent is not that dissimilar to my own. That's because he's from the same neck of the woods as myself in Sheffield, the northern boy. You've always been from round here, Vinnie, have you? Always been from Sheffield?
I haven't.
Born and raised?
I moved here in my 20s. I'm from the Midlands originally.
Oh, we won't hold that against you. I could see Andy itching to say something there, wasn't he? I could see him in the corner.
I know. I've lived in Sheffield longer than I lived there, so I'm like a honorary Sheffielder now.
Well, what I was going to say, seeing as you did move from down there in the Midlands back up to Sheffield, I assume that's what gave you your interest in aliens, with all the strange, wonderful people that live in Sheffield.
It certainly picked up when I was here, but I was kind of loosely into the subject beforehand. But yeah, mainly since I've lived here is when I really kind of ramped up and started looking into it really deeply.
Yeah. Well, that leads me nicely onto the first question, which is going to be, where did it all start? Where did you where did you get the interest in aliens? I mean, it's quite a niche topic. I know that for myself. I've only really recently dipped my toe into the topic, but it's really grasped my interest. So let's hear it. How did you even get involved in all of this?
I mean, I always had an interest in science fiction growing up with, the great movies of the early 80s and stuff like that. So it always kind of, the spark was there from a really young age. But I guess in my 20s, I started exploring fringe subjects a little bit, asking the bigger questions about reality and everything in this world and beyond. And so I kind of went between a few different subjects like ancient history and things like that. And UFOs was always there, but I never sort of touched it. I never really thought that much about it. But then when I finally did, I think it was a lecture that Richard Dolan gave while he was actually at a conference here in the UK. I found it on YouTube and I listened to it. And for some reason, that one just stuck with me. And I just kept pondering some of the things he talked about. And so I just started gradually listening to a few more sort of lectures and sort of conference speeches. And then I sort of discovered the declassified archives, mainly the US stuff. And that was it. I was just hooked. I was down the rabbit hole, late nights in front of my computer, just feeling like I could find the answer somewhere if I just kept going. And like, here I am 15 years later and further from the answer than I ever was.
It's amazing how many people say that, actually. So just touching on what you started that sentence with, it wasn't initially UAPs that got you interested. It was various things from ancient history. Are we talking Anunnaki, that kind of thing?
Not really. More kind of like just the pyramids and sort of ancient Egypt, kind of the stuff that we still see today. South America, the pyramids there, and the kind of ancient structures. It was more about how it was done. That question of, I never really went straight to that. It must have been aliens that built the pyramids kind of thing. But it was always that, was there an advanced civilization that we have sort of lost all knowledge of? It was that kind of thing more so.
Sure. And did you follow things like Graham Hancock, his kind of content at the time with the ancient aliens things? A lot of it's quite linked, isn't it? And Andy he'll back me up on this. On our channel, on this YouTube channel that we do, we cover everything, from the ancient history. I mean, what we were talking like last week, Andy, about the pyramids, the new discovery.
Tartaria, all kinds of things we were discussing last week. It was really, really good. Really, really good.
Crop circles as well. Yeah, it was interesting. So we dig into a lot of different stuff. But yourself, obviously, you started off with the ancient history part and then the UAP. Do you find that those kind of topics are very interlinked? Do you think that there's ETs that have got a hand in it? And
yeah, I mean, the possibility is definitely there. If you look at some of the sort of ancient history, whether it be cave paintings, things like that, or ancient artworks, there just seems to be these depictions. Even if you look in the Bible, there are descriptions that, if translated to the way we speak now, would sound very much like a UFO sighting. And so there is that connection, although it is quite limited in how you actually can research stuff without actually traveling to a lot of locations. It's not like there's an archive of declassified ancient documents that you can really dig into. So I think that's where I realized my limitations as far as research went. And that's why when I found the UFO subject and realized it was just a vast amount of data to trawl through, then I was kind of more in my element.
yeah, sure. Now, you took an interest in it, and there's a very big difference between being very interested in it. I mean, like I was a few months ago. There's a big difference between taking an interest in it and actually doing something about it. So what was it that sort of spurred you on to, want to go and take this public and bring this information to the front?
So initially, I think when we first went into lockdown and the world just shut down and completely changed, and I obviously found myself with a lot more time on my hands. And at that time, I was doing a lot of research, and my brother would come around and he would sit with me and I would just waffle on and talk to him about everything I discovered that week or whatever. And it was getting to the point where, like, I need to do something with this. And so first thing I did was just start an Instagram account and just post a few bits of information that I'd found, more so for myself to look back on, not for any other reason. And it just started gaining traction so quickly. Within a matter of a couple of months, it was just like, I could make something of this. I realized that there was a community that wanted that kind of information, and there were obviously people doing it already, but I think I just made it in time before kind of the masses kind of jumped on board and did it. And it went straight huge, went into Instagram. And I started doing Instagram lives after probably about 8-9 months. And the engagement there was incredible. I was speaking to a lot of people on the lives, but they were just always in the chat asking questions. And because I'd researched so much, I was like, hang about, I can answer a lot of these questions, or at least give my speculative opinion on these things. And I didn't know that I'd all those years of just burying my head in those documents actually would come to something like that. And of course, the Instagram led to me creating an X account, or Twitter at the time, meeting a lot of people in the US, making quickly good friends. And then the YouTube channel came straight after that. And it's been a whirlwind ever since, like crazy.
And was it, when you started, was you starting from literally fresh, a brand new Instagram account, no followers, and that's you posting daily? And were you hashtagging, or were you joining groups? I'm just trying
No,
because
it was. Sorry, go on.
I was the reason why. I mean, we've all started social media accounts. It's quite difficult to get the traction initially. So I'm curious, were you hashtagging it and mentioning various people to sort of broaden your, your reach, or was it literally just whoever came across your profile started following it because it was interesting? It just potluck, basically.
Yeah, it was potluck. Again, I think because it was the start of lockdown, everyone else was sat at home and they thought, oh, I'll go onto Instagram. And at first, I wasn't even writing descriptions or hashtagging at all. Literally post a photo or a video. Again, it was just for my own reference. But people were obviously finding it and following. And then after a while, I was seeing hundreds of followers coming in some days. So I was like, I got to do this a bit better. So I made that a little bit more of an effort to put a bit of information in the descriptions and hashtag it. And, the algorithm regularly changes on all social media and video platforms. And so I would try and kind of learn the algorithm a little bit. I mean, it's changed tenfold in the last few years. It's very difficult these days to kind of follow it. So I was just following trends and stuff with how long I would post videos. Because if you posted from a computer, you could post up to an hour videos at first when I started on Instagram. And so I was putting 15-minute clips from videos on, and I was like, it hits for a few weeks and then it just doesn't. And so, I gave it that extra bit of effort to make it kind of work, and it did work. And there we go.
So one thing I really want to highlight here, just in case anybody is listening in and they do maybe want to dip the toe into this, or not particularly subject, but in general with podcasting, what you can tell here from somebody who's quite successful in this arena is that they've done the work prior to starting. The research is there, the interest is there, and the gathering of the information, essentially arming yourself with the tools to defend your point of view. Now,
Sure.
If you are watching on and you want to get involved in this, there's a shining example of how to do it and how to do it successfully. You've got to be a subject matter expert on the topic itself. Clearly, Vinny he's not winged it in any way. So there is that, you know, it takes the work. It does take hard work and consistency. Because I can imagine, yes, you did pick up momentum quite quickly in the beginning, but you did the hours, didn't you? The schedule of the posts and all the rest of it that comes along with it.
Yeah, I mean, you get out what you put in. It's that same old cliche, really. And, you know, I was putting in the time, and to this day, you can't not put in the time because it will show in your content. And it is very easy to get disillusioned in this subject, not necessarily by what you're doing, but like by the subject itself, because there are serious downtimes and quiet periods where there isn't a lot happening. It feels like everything's sort of stalled. But that is the perfect time where I personally will go back and look at old cases from decades ago and just rejig stuff that I probably looked at a few years ago and just refresh it in your head. So I'm always kind of re-adding and reshuffling the information and data that I have in my mind fresh at that time. And so, you know, I might make a video on an older case or interview someone about an older case. And so, yeah, but one thing I will say, there is only so much preparation you can do, especially when it comes to podcasting, because the best thing you can do is turn that camera on, microphone on, and go for it. I did that with my first ever show. I did it live as an interview. Yeah, I prepped a few questions, but it wasn't anything more than that. It was just, let's just do it live in front of nobody pretty much on YouTube. And then we're in it, then we're going. And that was it.
You know, I can say, sorry, Andy.
It's all right. Sorry, I was going to say that is the hardest part. Is pressing that go button and actually doing it. That is definitely the hardest part. There's no point in having a script. You've got to have just a basic outline, what you want to say, and then just let it flow and flow and flow. That's exactly.
Yeah. I mean, what I was going to say then was just reiterating that point. Thanks for that, Andy. So I don't need to mention that. But what I was going to say, Vinny, when you did start and you started gathering the momentum, I know the people that were joining your Instagram were interested in the content that you were posting anyway. But did you find that there was a lot of people accusing you maybe of being a tinfoil hat brigade? You know, in your personal circles, did you receive any kind of negativity towards it? The topic, I mean.
Not really, no, to be honest. I mean, I think my friends and family always knew I had interest in fringe subjects or sort of slightly obscure areas of interest. But no, I mean, people saw that I was putting in the work and it was making me happy. You know, I was doing what I loved doing. And then, yeah, I've been lucky to be surrounded by supportive people. Obviously, it became quite apparent quite quickly that social media is a brutal world. You know, I'd obviously used it in my personal life, but never really outside of my own friends and family circles or people you went to school with. So there are obviously so many new people out there, the general public, who are very happy to sit behind their screen and keyboard and say horrible things. And at first you try and retaliate or make a point back, but you quickly learn that that's just a road you shouldn't go down, and ignore the trolls, ignore the haters. And yeah, it's just part and parcel of putting yourself out in a public way.
And I think I'm going to have to say it again, Andy.
What? Go on.
The line I used last week, do you remember? The pig one. I said this last week, Vinny. I'm going to say it again because it's my catchphrase now, isn't it? What you just said there, I'll reiterate that by saying you never wrestle with a pig because the pig will get you dirty and it'll like it.
There you go.
And that's exactly right, isn't it? You don't argue with these people because you can't argue with stupidity. And ignorance, by the way. And let's move on swiftly. I will say, and we'll get to the point now, you know, we got you on here to talk about your channel and ETs, and that's what we're all dying to talk about. Once you got the following that you did get, talk to me about guests, because you've had some incredible guests on, you know, and we can name a few. Jason Sands, you know, you've had Chris Ramsey from Area 52, another incredible podcaster who's been very successful in this field, as well as Magic as well. You've had so many high, you know, caliber guests, and obviously that's come from the following and the information that you've put out there. But at what point did you start approaching people, you know, real high caliber guests, them second and first hand witnesses?
I mean, I think, you know, I had big guests pretty early on. I think I've done over 250 interviews, and I think I started getting big guests at like interview number 5 and things like that, because I would reach out to everybody because I just believe if you don't ask, you don't get. And I was I will say I was lucky enough, like I said, to have already made some friends in the community, other people who already had their own channels and stuff like that. So I was able to ask for like some help, can you put in a good word with so-and-so and things like that. But again, you still have to be, someone that's willing to put it out there and ask, and I was very lucky with that. And my interview style is very much let the guests speak. People, you often see interviews where it's more of a conversation. Don't get me wrong, I love conversations and that, but so many times I want it to be 75% guest, 25% me or thereabouts, and that's kind of been my structure, and it seems to resonate. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And the one thing I've tried to do as well is when I get a big guest on, it's obviously nerve-wracking. I've tried to just take a deep breath and imagine, they're just like everyone else. They're just another human being, and it seems to work. But I will say, I still get nervous turning that camera on, putting that mic on, and doing a show, even if it's recorded. It's not something I always ever imagined that I'd be doing. So, I still get those moments of this is crazy.
It's awesome, though, right? I bet that's an incredible thing to. Yeah. Now, when you've just said about getting the guests. Initially, did you go out networking, as in go overseas to conventions and various other events to make contact with people, or did you just message them on social media?
Yeah, message them on social media or find their email addresses from the internet somewhere, and again, it was lucky the amount that I put out, and I always write a really nice structured invitation to them, not just say, hey, I want you on my show kind of thing. It was always very structured and that. And I guess that helped. But the convention thing, again, because it was lockdown and it all grew in those years of lockdown, there were no conventions. Everything is shut down. And then when lockdown, we were coming out of it, most of the big conferences, especially here in the UK, just didn't reappear, or at least for a couple more years. And so by the time I started going to conventions, I'd already made some kind of established in the subject to a degree. And so I was getting invited to them then. So yeah, it's weird, really weird.
Yeah. And so as far as your guests are, you've had, like I said, you've had some really big names on. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask you, if you can think now, maybe off the top of your head, is there any moments that really stand out? And you just said you've done 250 interviews, so I'm not expecting you to pull something out straight away. But is there any moments from any of those interviews that you've just sat back, almost lost for words, awestruck about what the person has been telling you that has maybe been so compelling, so mind-blowing? Is there something or a moment that stands out for you?
Wow. That's
a big question, that, isn't it?
It really is, because there's probably been so many moments where maybe even if it's not exactly what they're saying, like it's super revelatory, but more that they're saying something interesting or new that hasn't been sort of mentioned. And I realize I'm doing the interview and I feel like I'm watching it at times. And I'm like, you've got to speak, Vinny, because you forget that you're the one doing that interview, especially when they're live shows on YouTube. Because I used to have like a 3-screen setup with live show, this screen, and then notes on the side. And so I'd find myself like forgetting that I'm interviewing. But I mean, I guess one of the big moments was Lou Elizondo, the first interview I did with him, which I think was around my 5th podcast.
So just to bring everybody up to speed, could you just explain who Lou is, please, for Vinny, just for the ones who don't know?
Yeah, Lou's the former sort of head of the Pentagon program, ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, that the New York Times broke the story in 2017. And, Lou retired from the Department of Defense because of that unwarranted secrecy of this subject. And, he's kind of become the figure of UAP disclosure in recent years. And so, I was lucky to get him on so early on the show. But like I said, I'd only done 4 shows before to a handful of people live. And again, this was live. And I remember there was like 1,000 people watching it. And it was just shocking. Really,
so that was your 5th interview. You managed to get Lou Elizondo on. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I can only imagine how nervous you were at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing about Lou is he would always join early before we went live. And so we had a really good chat to break the ice. And, that really helped by the time it came to the interview. And a few glasses of wine, maybe.
Well, I will apologise that we haven't been on an hour before we press record, having a skinful. Maybe next time we can do that.
For sure.
I'm not as professional as you. I just literally jump straight on. Fortunately, I will hold my hand up and say I do know Vinny a little bit, so it's not like we're just jumping in cold. So I will say that in my defence.
There you go.
So your fifth interview was Luis Elizondo. So the four prior. Well, let's say four there or thereabouts. But the ones prior to that, were they sort of high caliber guests or in sort of preparation for that? Or was it a massive jump to the big leagues?
No, they were mid caliber for sure. And I don't mean that with any disrespect to them. I mean,
Sure.
My very first interview was Dave Beatty, and he's the producer and director of the Nimitz Encounters documentary, which was huge for me. I really enjoyed that documentary. And so I thought he's a good guest to get on first, touch upon a case that I found super compelling and interesting. And so, I did start in a good spot and find my toes very quickly, find my feet. And so I can't remember who was in between him and Lou, but yeah, always interesting people. I just love hearing from people what they've got to say.
And just while we're on Lou, during that interview, what was it during the interview? I mean, that really sort of blew your mind a little bit?
Gosh. I mean, I remember some of the questions, but I know it was my first time kind of getting those I can't talk about that answers a lot. I remember that being like, oh God, I don't want an hour of just not getting anything out of him. But I'm sure he said some good stuff. I've interviewed him so many times. I've struggled to remember which one was which, to be honest, and which bit of information came from which interview. But, he's always dropped breadcrumbs. That's what he does. He does it so well. And for anyone that's researchers, you see those breadcrumbs, you know where to fit them for future reference when pulling more information together on a certain incident or something like that. So I apologize. I can't think of anything in particular from that.
No, that's fine. It's just a question. Maybe something will crop up as we move down the line. I mean, Luis Elizondo with ATIP, they, I mean, there's a few different 3-letter agencies now, isn't there, in the arena within America. Now, sort of something that seems to have been a trend is that these 3-letter agencies don't seem to be communicating with each other on a lot of this stuff. And now that is the problem. I'm being a military guy, I can understand the need to know. I've been sort of subject to that myself. But the thing and you probably agree with this, with a topic this big, doesn't it almost beg a belief that these are maybe some of the most qualified people in the world, in maybe some of the most important and profound offices in the world, who are not communicating with each other? Now, I'm going to ask you, do you think this is it's purposely done this way in order to keep the veil of secrecy over this topic? Or do you think it's generally just incompetence between departments not speaking to each other?
I think there's a bit of both. I will say this has been structured to the point of not sharing information between military branches and the intelligence community for many decades. It's always been that plan of keeping everything separated and compartmentalized for definite. But I think there has been incompetence as well, because I think we have to remember that a lot of the people who are in the know aren't necessarily the highest ranking individuals in their branch, or whether it's the Army, the Air Force, Navy, etc. They're not always the top dogs. It's people who have a specific skill that can be utilized with regards to this kind of information or program. And so there's always a lack of communication. The left hand doesn't always know what the right hand's doing. There is definitely incompetence, but it's not been enough to let it slip too much so that it reveals the full picture. Let's say they've managed to keep the secrecy intact for the most part.
Which leads us nicely onto Skywatcher. Now, I wanted to bring this up. We've spoken about Skywatcher before on the podcast. For anybody who has listened before, please do refer to his previous recordings if you want to learn about what it is and, the relevance of it. But we're talking secret compartmentalized information and need to know. And one of the best examples of that from the horse's mouth in recent times, I think, has been Jake Barber. Being the crash retrieval helicopter pilot, he's already stated numerous times that he doesn't know anything about where they came from or where they go. It's his job to fly out, retrieve the craft, take it to point B, drop it down, and that's the last he sees of it. And there's the perfect example of that need to know in action. Now, if it's happening there, it's happening everywhere. And this is a private aerospace company, if you will, that is, I don't know, the clandestine nature of it all is a bit fishy to me. I mean, I don't know whether Jake Barber's military and he's just working as a sort of a backhand contractor for this aerospace. I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but it's a bit ropey. Now, I'm going to get your opinion on Skywatcher. What do you think of the whole thing, the way that it's developing, the way that it sort of appeared on the scene in January out of nowhere? I mean, how do you feel about the whole Skywatcher thing? Do you think this is the big step towards progress?
I'm cautiously optimistic. You know, I was aware that they were going to come forward in January. I know Ross had been working on the story for close to 2 years. So it was great. I'm a big proponent for civilian organizations. I don't believe Jake's kind of under the auspice of any aerospace corporations anymore. I couldn't be 100% sure on that. But I think one thing that Skywatcher, and it's become very clear in the last few weeks, one thing that they're doing very well is that they're taking that balance between giving the public what they want with these very glossy visual releases on YouTube of the kind of work that they've been doing. But they've also kind of doing the science, doing the work. They've got Dr. Gary Nolan involved with them recently. Dr. Bob McGuire has joined them as an advisor. So they're doing kind of both things. They're doing the public facing side of things, but with the serious scientific analysis. You know, they've got some incredible members of their team who we've recently kind of learned about. I think James Fowler, the head of their tech division and data collection. We're soon going to learn a bit more about their psionics team. And I think that is what makes them stand out a lot from other people as well. They've got this very hardcore special forces group with a lot of technology, which is their own proprietary technology. But then they've also got this other psionics team, which, you know, looking back at CE5 or even before that, other forms of human initiated contact, it's great to see that mixture. You know, they're not afraid to mix it up and throw things in the blender, as it were. So yeah, I'm optimistic. I think they've got a good plan. They put out a white paper, which was, I think, 50 or 60 pages publicly, showing what they want to do and a kind of bit of a time frame. And so look, they've got all the tools in the bag. I just hope it continues with some momentum.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I really like about what they're doing is I like the way that they've laid it out almost like an idiot's guide for everybody to look at as far as the 6 steps to disclosure are concerned. And what I also like is on the previous interviews, they've told us at what phase of those 6 steps they're at. Now, one thing that I found very interesting and very exciting, actually, and you may have been the same, is that how far along the chain they actually are already, considering they only started in January. As far as the dog whistle is concerned, which is the proprietary technology that you were talking about, they're already at phase 3 of 6 on that. And then at phase 2 of 6 with the psionics team. So they are making headway. And I think it's important to say that now. And if you haven't seen the Skywatcher episodes, please do watch them, because, you know, it really does bring it on for you, just what these guys are doing. And like Vinny said, it's science-based. And what is really exciting about this is the results will be undeniable because they're going to be peer-to-peer reviewed. And that's important, isn't it? And that's something that's not happened before, isn't it? Because of the secrecy of this.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of organizations in the past have struggled to get the funding to be able to do that kind of work. It's not cheap to do it at that level where it gets to be peer reviewed. So, you know, this is really, really good. I mean, they were doing a lot of work prior to January. This certainly isn't their first rodeo with regards to being out on the range, which is the area that they utilize for these experiments and summonings, let's say. So I think they knew what they wanted to do as soon as that January hit and it became public. They were ready to go again, kind of thing. And I think we're going to see more of that, more trips. I know I spoke with Science Bob the other day, and he's going out with them on an expedition. I've spoken to a couple of the psionics team privately, and they're really busy people. They're doing a lot that we haven't heard about yet.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I'm excited for the next episode of it. I've been watching it, you know, fingernails in the sofa, waiting to see what's happening. It's been incredible, really. You know, in all the stuff that I've seen over the years, you know, we've watched the Nimitz thing. The 2017 release was a massive one, and then that really did fire the momentum up, didn't it? Because did we have 3 congressional hearings in the space of 3 years, as opposed to the 1 that had been previously done in the 50 years prior? So we've had more action in the last 3 years than we've had in 50 years of this topic being out there. Why do you think that is?
I mean, you have to look at people like Christopher Mellon and again Lou Elizondo, who were instrumental in bringing that the subject to Congress. This is exactly what they planned to do. As soon as Lou left the DOD in 2017, they were straight onto it. Chris Mellon being the former, oh God, I forget now what his position was. Undersecretary of Defense on Intelligence, I think it was. He had that into kind of the Capitol Hill crowd. And so with the information that they had, with the witnesses like David Fravor and Alex Dietrich from the Nimitz, they were able to brief members of Congress and kind of get that foot in the door, which then, after a couple of years, led to the first bit of language we saw in the first National Defense Authorization Act, which I think was 2021 for fiscal year 2022, where we had the 180-day first report that was signed in. So that just kind of kicked the ball down the road. And before long, it snowballed into what we're seeing now, which is regular hearings, both in the House and the Senate, as well as language updates every year in the NDAA and the Intelligence Authorization Act as well. So it's just incredible to see.
Yeah, I can echo that. The one thing I wanted to ask you is another thing is that the Paulina. I can never get it off my tongue. But anyway, they've obviously put her in charge of the JFK. Is it the Task Force for Secrets? Or I can't remember the title of it. As you know, they put a lot of these long-winded words in front of these departments. But anyway, she's leading the charge on the disclosure of various topics. They've done the JFK files. I don't know if they've done the Epstein files. I think they said they were. I don't know whether they've been released yet. This was months ago now, I think. And the UAP topic obviously was mentioned during the White House announcement as well. And that was, again, months ago. Do you think there is any intention from within the government to release this? Or do you think it's sort of smoke and mirrors?
It's too compartmentalized again. I think we've certainly got people who are interested in releasing it. I think that specific task force is very limited in what they can do. They have a very short time scale. They have very limited reach with regards to getting to all of the information that is just spread across so many different departments within the IC. I think the best bet is to go through the congressional hearings. Now, recently we had David Grush announced as a special staff advisor to Representative Eric Burleson in the House. That is going to lead to kind of hopefully more hearings where more witnesses will be subpoenaed to appear, which then leads to Congress actually being able to use their power to go and investigate these things. I think it's going to be a long process, but that's where we're going to see progress over these short-term task forces with limited reach. And, the UAP caucus, as they call it, Tim Burchett and Luna, Nancy Mace, are quite limited. We need to see the Senate getting more involved, the Gang of Eight, the people with a bit more power, the clearances as well. I think there's always been a bit of an issue between who has the right to sit in a skiff and hear that high level information. There's so many kind of boxes to tick and T's to cross and I's and all that kind of thing for it to happen. That's why it's slow progress. And it seems a lot publicly like nothing's happening, whereas they're just getting everything aligned so that it can move forward step by step. So yeah, it's crazy. It's a lot more complicated than I think a lot of people understand.
There are some concerns from my end anyway. I mean, this is just me. I don't know about the rest of the community. And again, this is probably a concern that's been ongoing for many years, is the corruption behind this. Now, for me, and this is just speculative, by the way, this is not built on any fact, but there seems to be that there has been a lot of money, taxpayer money, been flowing in the direction of this topic and potentially not, it shouldn't have been. Do you know what I mean? I mean, black budget programs. Now, for this to come out or for us to get disclosure, somebody is going to go to jail, or some people are going to go to jail. Now, I think, and this is just on my own sort of speculation, I think that this subject is so complicated to unpack and unravel and disclose because of that reason. I feel maybe that there may be a more positivity from some kind of an amnesty for people who have got information, who have worked in these black budget programs and that have done things that maybe they shouldn't have done. Now, there needs to be an amnesty. There has to be a clean bill of health for these individuals to come forward and give that information up. And I feel like that might speed this up a hell of a lot. I'm quite surprised that there hasn't been already. Is there anything that you know from speaking to people with inside this topic, if there is potentially going to be an amnesty or something to really flush people out and give the information that they've got?
I think from what I can tell, amnesty is on the list of kind of potential things that they can, use, but I think it's quite far down the list. But I think there's confidence enough that done properly, this can happen. Confirmation, maybe not full disclosure, but confirmation, the first stage of disclosure can happen if done correctly. And the people that have held this secret for so long will still be punished for what they've done, which I kind of understand, because we only really have one shot at this, so it has to be done right. And, I think from being kind of from where I see things, I kind of understand the speed that it's going at, that slowness. But then looking from the public perspective, how it just seems like nothing's happening. I get the frustrations that I see daily as well. And so it's that toss up between, do we just want all of the information now, or do we want it delivered properly for the whole world, so that it has kind of minimal impact and we can kind of do things correctly with that information? And I kind of now sort of lean towards that. There have definitely been individuals who, have died. A lot of people who were originally covering this up have died. It's kind of, we're into that new generation now recently. And I think that's why we're seeing more people in government, in Congress, and in military branches coming forward, because they're sick of it as well. That was the old generation, the greybeards, that was their way of doing things. It's different now. And I think that's huge as well. I think it's really positive. There are so many people who want to talk publicly but can't, because they're either still employed, under the auspices of the government, or as a contractor. But it's happening. It's really happening. And I think people just try and be a little bit more patient if you can be. I think we'll see more progress. I mean, I'm optimistic, but I think I think we will.
So staying on point, and we've talked about Jake Barber. We know that he was employed as a private contractor for the aerospace companies in this crash retrieval team. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to throw a curveball at you here, Vinny. And this is speculation, so you can answer how you like. And there is a caveat on this, that it has no bearing by any evidence of any kind. So this is all speculation. Sure. Now, the other day, as I've just mentioned, we do know that Jake worked for these private aerospace companies, one of which, Northrop Grumman. Something interesting happened the other day, Vinny. Literally the day after, I think there was a White House announcement. Was it a White House? It might have been just an official, but he announced that we have the tech already to manipulate space-time. Is that right, Andy? Round about that? Words to that effect? I think I'm paraphrasing. But that's anyway, exactly what he said, so that happened. And then the very next day, would you believe it, Northrop Grumman has an explosion. Is that right? Again, Andy, this is all information you've given me. Now, what do you think of that, Vinny? How do you feel about that situation? Do you think it's a coincidence, or do you think somebody's trying to get rid of the evidence?
I think it's a coincidence, personally, because it's one thing I've seen in my time researching and looking into this subject, speaking to a lot of people deeply, is that you can very, very easily make as many connections as you want like that will kind of point to a conspiracy theory. That's very easy to do. But I think with a little bit of depth and a little bit of research and talking with people, you kind of understand that certain things are said and clipped and posted on the internet and taken completely out of context to their original meaning. I think from what I've seen with regards to this space-time manipulation comment that was made, I believe that was a bit more broad and not as precise as what we kind of thought it was. Again, I always err on the side of caution when trying to link things because they fit a certain narrative, So yeah, I think it's coincidence.
No, the one thing I will say here is that I think it's refreshing that you've said that, although maybe slightly disappointing for myself and my own fun. But it's refreshing. The reason for that is you're an evidence-based man. So anything that you're saying has been checked and cleared, and it's not just firing from the hip. So again, if anybody is watching and wants to watch what Vinny's all about and his incredibly successful channel, you can rest safe in the knowledge that anything that's discussed on there is evidence-based and it's not speculative.
Mostly evidence-based. What I will say is that like I said, I these days I err on the side of caution, because it's very easy for me to say something and people to take it as gospel, and then they roll with it, and I'm just like spreading like a bad weed in the garden. I have to be very careful in how I present my information by sort of saying, letting the viewer make up their own mind, but saying, this is what I believe, but I'm also very happy to be proven wrong. I'm and in a lot of cases, I hope I'm wrong, but I'd rather say things like, I think it's a coincidence than, oh yeah, that's definitely this, or it looks like that, because that's just feeding that kind of, that fire, that I don't want to feed. I want to keep it all as level as I can, So.
Sure. So just, we're going to start wrapping up, but I'm going to just shoot a couple of questions at you, Vinny.
Sure.
Here's the first one. Aliens, are they real?
Wow.
I go straight into the definition of aliens because I don't use that term.
Okay, I'll put it in another way.
Yeah, go on. Then.
NHI.
Yeah,
is it real?
Yeah, absolutely.
Non-human intelligence.
Long answer or short answer?
No, we'll stick with the short one. Non-human intelligence is real.
Yes.
Is it here on Earth?
Yes.
It's interesting, that, isn't it? I love that. I love that. On its own, it's just incredible. I've seen many a video, many a podcast with quick draw questions like that, and I find them incredibly profound. Really profound. It's the Jake Barber one that we used on the little clip that we used the other day with Ross Coulthard. He asked the same thing, and it still gives me shudders when he asked that question. Yeah. It's incredible. Disclosure. Are we going to see it before 2027, 2028? I know you're a cautious man. What do you think? Is it close? I mean, within a couple of years, within a few years, are we that close at this point? I know it's hard to say.
I'll go with yes.
You think so?
Because we are close. It's just that it's like the hardest bit of a race. It's that last bit, that last dash. It can all go wrong very easily, but it could also go very well. So I'll go with yes. I'm optimistic.
Good stuff. I mean, over the years, this has been sort of like a relay race, hasn't it? Somebody's been holding the baton. And what it looks like at the minute, agree or disagree, is that we're in a 4x100 relay and Jake Barber is on the home stretch 100 meters with the baton in hand to finish this off. Do you think that this is sort of the last push before disclosure, or do you think this could spiral out for years?
It has. Anything like this can always spiral for years. I think he is in that last stretch of a relay race, but I think that last stretch isn't a straight line. I think it's up a mountain and as curved as you can possibly imagine. So it's certainly a hard path, but it's totally possible. Everything's possible.
And returning back to you, Vinny, what's next for you? I mean, I know you've got the disclosure team, but tell me, what's the next step for you?
The next step, I'm going to be doing more conferences, speaking at conferences and hosting. I'm going out to Contact in the Desert in California next month to host a panel on USOs with Richard Dolan, Danny Sheehan, and a whole bunch of others.
And just for everybody listening, USOs, if you could just explain.
Yeah, unidentified submerged objects or submersible objects. So anything under the water, oceans, lakes, things like that. So really honored to be hosting that panel. And then I'm going to be recording a live episode of my podcast there as well. And generally just mingling with everyone there. It's going to be amazing. So I'm doing a few more things like that. I'm going to be doing one in Europe next year as well. What's next? I want to get back out investigating, boots on the ground. I was lucky enough to go out to Colombia 2 years in a row and investigate and film a documentary series out there. I want to get back into that because there's no better feeling than actually doing something.
That's really something that interests me. You never know, mate. Being from Sheffield, we might jump in the car together.
Hey, happy to.
Split the fuel.
Absolutely, mate. Always.
We're still from Yorkshire. We're still from Yorkshire, Andy. I'm still cheap.
I wasn't going to say it. I didn't want to get involved in that one.
Questions from the floor, then, Andy. Have you got anything? I've just been hogging the time the whole interview. Have you got anything you've been that's been burning away over there?
It's two questions. You touched on it a little bit there with the submerged UFOs that people are seeing. Now, do you think that Skywatcher, what they're seeing in the sky, is connected to what's being seen in the ocean, or do you think it's two different kind of things?
I'd likely speculate that it's connected. I think these objects that perform these outrageous capabilities in the sky have they're transmedium. They can do it in any atmosphere, out of the atmosphere, in the air, in the water. I think they are connected. whether every single one, because there was 7 or was it 9 categories that Skywatcher put out. I think it was 9.
Yeah, that's right.
I
9
don't
classifications.
know if they are all the same thing and they can appear different at different times to different people or different sensors. Are they completely separate? But I think generically, anything that can perform outside of gravity can also perform underwater without the pressure and atmospheric pressures that we sort of get there. So yeah, possibly.
Yeah, the reason I ask is obviously the ones they see underwater, some of them have been described as bigger than oil rigs.
Yeah.
There's supposed to be a video out there, obviously we're never going to see, but it's one that goes whishing past an oil rig, and it's actually bigger than it. And the ones in the sky, obviously you can't get perspective in the sky because you don't know how far away these things are.
Right.
But they never seem to be as big as that in the sky. That was the reason I asked.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with the case that you mentioned there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen a couple of things recently there with this interesting LiDAR they've got. Obviously, they've mapped out the Amazon rainforest, found out that was man-made, and it's pretty incredible, really. And it's just cultivated ground that's grown. But there's pyramids and various other things. I mean, Christ, I tell you what, I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to drag you into this because it's another hour if we start talking about stuff like this. And you've got to get off. But what I will say is thanks a lot again for coming on, Andy. Thanks for your questions there at the end. And what I will say is, again, Vinnie, where can we find you? So anybody tuning in has found anything you've said remotely interesting, I'm one of them. So I'll be tuning in as ever. I'm already subscribed. Brownie points. But where can we find you, Vinnie? And we're going to put your links in the description as well, by the way.
Yeah, pretty much Disclosure Team on all platforms. There's obviously some variations of the name, but if you just search Disclosure Team, you'll see a black and white logo. You can't miss it. Find me on one. It pretty much links to the rest. So Instagram, X, YouTube, and probably a few others here and there as well. So yeah, everyone's welcome.
Brilliant. Vinnie, you're a massive subject matter expert. Thank you so much for taking the time out your day to come on and speak to us. I would love to ask you now and put you on the spot if we can get you back on at some point in the future. It's a massive topic, massive amounts of unpacking required. I know you're busy, but if we can pick your brain again at any point, I'd love that.
Yeah, pleasure. Anytime, man. Just say the word.
Thanks a lot, Vinnie. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.
Thank you, Vinnie.